Good morning and welcome back to another Eduro Learning Facebook Live. I want to start by apologizing. I have a little bit of a cold, so if my voice cracks or kind of goes away as we're talking, I apologize. I'll try to get back into the conversation as quickly as I can. So today's topic is one that is super close to my heart. I'm really passionate about, really excited about it because I feel like it's an area of growth for me, which I love learning and talking about things that are areas of growth for me. So today's topic is, why is it important for students to be content creators? And I think probably the thing that starts this off for me is that our kids, all of our kids and us, are constantly exposed to creative media on YouTube, on TV, in the movies, wherever, and we are rarely asking students to actually produce that kind of creative work. And it's not something you can just kind of figure out in one go and be an expert at it. It's something you actually need practice at. And when you ask students what would they like to be creating, whether it's my own students or students when I go visit other schools, almost all of them say there's always someone in the room or a large group in the room saying they want to learn how to create content for YouTube, essentially. So kids are really exposed to this and really passionate about it and really interested in it, but they're almost never asked to do it. And because it's something you have to learn, I feel like it's something we can bring into the classroom. So today's topic is going to be broken down into kind of 6 ideas for why I think it's really important for students to be content creators. And if you see me looking off to the side here, it's because that's where my notes are. And I tried to put them in order so it kind of makes sense and flows together. So the first reason that I think it's really important for students to be content creators is because creating content after consuming content is a really great way to process our thinking. If you're being taught and you're learning and you're experiencing a whole bunch of different ideas, and then you have to create something with it to produce something that demonstrates your understanding, that is one way that we can process our thinking and make sure that we really have consolidated and understood what we're learning about. So number one is creating content is a great way to process thinking. My second reason why I think it's really important for students to be content creators is because they're going to learn the process of content creating. And I say this all the time, but life is just a series of creating things, a series of projects, right? Whether it's dinner tonight or planning a trip or planning an event or doing something, making something, we're doing that all the time in our daily lives, but we rarely kind of break down bigger tasks for kids to help them understand how to manage those larger projects. So by asking students to create content, to create something, you can actually teach them the process of project design. And I feel like that's a critical life skill, something I'm doing all the time. And I feel really lucky because I've been an MYP design teacher for, I don't know, 17 years or something like that. And in the design, MYP design program, you teach the design process, the design cycle. And I think that design cycle process is a really great process for kids to use no matter what subject area you're in, so they can learn how to scaffold a larger project. And I'm not going to talk too deeply about the design cycle because we have tons of resources about that. But generally speaking, it's any kind of process that you go through when you naturally create something. So there's all sorts of different labels, but the first stage would be like research and investigation. The second stage would be like planning and getting organized. The third stage would actually be creating your product, doing the thing. And then the fourth stage would be evaluation, and you can go back around through that cycle as many times as you need. So I think it's really important for students to be content creators, for them to learn those stages of the design process, because those are stages that we go through every day when we create things in our daily lives. And teaching kids how to structure those kinds of things really helps them be efficient and effective when you want them to produce something. And the cool thing about the design cycle, just one more thing, is that it works for any subject area. So if you start bringing it into your classroom and your colleagues are interested too, and they're starting to bring it into their classrooms, kids will automatically make the connections between that design process cycle, so they know, oh, now we're going to be researching. Let's start with a research phase. Or we probably should really plan this before we create our presentation, whatever the case may be. So first thing is it helps us process our thinking. Second thing is it teaches us the process of creating products. In my case, I like to call it the design cycle. The third reason I think it's really important for students to be content creators is because it helps make learning personal. If you're asking students to create some kind of content, ideally there's going to be some student choice, some differentiation involved. Not everyone's going to be creating exactly the same thing about exactly the same content. So that gives students an opportunity to demonstrate their learning in a way that's uniquely interesting to them as an individual. So it's an opportunity to make learning personal. The fourth reason I think that it's important for students to be content creators is kind of a personal connection to me. I don't feel like I'm a very creative person. I said that this topic is one that's an area of growth for me, and that's because I would never describe myself as a creative person. I'm very kind of type A and linear and organized, but not really creative. And whenever I say that to people who are creative, they get really frustrated with me and they say, no, Kim, anyone can be creative, just in the medium that works best for you. So I think giving students an opportunity to be creators and to try lots of different mediums allows them to find that medium that's best for them. There's no reason they should go through their whole lives thinking they're not creative, because everybody can be creative. It's a skill we can learn, and we just need exposure to lots of different kinds of mediums or tools, and we need exposure to the process again and again and again to try and learn and find which one is the right fit for us as individuals. And that leads really well into my fifth reason for why I think it's important for students to be content creators, and that is because I think it builds resilience. When you are asked to create something, it's usually not going to be a perfect success the first time around. So you have this kind of built-in authenticity of failure. So you're trying to create something you're passionate about and interested in, because we're making learning personal for students. We're finding that medium that's really right for us, but it's not going to be perfect the first time around. So you have that opportunity to be really interested and invested in what you're creating, and maybe make some mistakes and learn from those mistakes and build some resiliency into the possibility that maybe the first time you create something, it's not going to be perfect, and that's okay, because you can keep going and keep trying. So that idea of bridging that gap in what you think you can create and what you really can create, and giving kids opportunities to move up and close what Ira Glass calls the taste gap, I think is a really great opportunity for kids to learn through experience and to build resiliency and become better at what they're interested in and passionate about. And then my sixth reason for asking students to be creators in your classroom is because I think there's real value in sharing. And I think when we're asking kids to create content, very often we're asking them to do that with technology tools, and the opportunity for sharing is built right into those tools. So I think there's a great opportunity for kids to create something that they're really passionate about and interested in, and is in a medium that's exciting for them, and then to share it with others. Because another kind of challenge many of us have is that we think that what we know is obvious to everyone. But actually, that's not usually the case. Usually something that's obvious to you could be something that's really fascinating or interesting or amazing to someone else. So the idea that we're giving kids an opportunity to share their learning with authentic audiences through something that they create themselves is really empowering and motivating, because they realize they have something of value to share. So those were my six reasons for why I think it's really important for students to be content creators. And I'm going to summarize those real quick because I see some new people have joined right now. The first reason I think is because I think it helps us process our thinking. The second reason is because I think it helps us learn the process of creating, and I think students need to be taught the structure of creating content, that project design. The third reason is because I think it allows us to make learning personal, really connect to students' personal individual interests. And along those lines, my fourth reason is that it helps students find their creative outlet, the medium through which they can be creative. And my fifth reason is, in the act of creating, we're learning through experience, so we're helping kids build resilience. And then my final reason is there's real value in sharing. And so when kids are creating things, ideally we're giving them an opportunity to share what they create as well. Having said all that, I hope that you think there is some value in asking students to be content creators. And I think kind of the next question might be, how do we do that? And that's a topic for another video, but I do want to kind of summarize my thinking along those lines too, because that's something that I think is the challenge. We are really confident and comfortable with the way we normally do things in the classroom, but if we're going to kind of switch things around and let the students be the content creators as opposed to us kind of delivering content to them, how do we kind of make that switch in the classroom? And I have 5 quick ideas for that, and they're kind of, I think, 5 Ps. I did them as. So I think the first way that you can allow students to be content creators is to provide time for practice in the classroom. It doesn't have to be a lot of time. It can be a little bit of time each day and can be individual for each kid. I think another way we can allow kids to be content creators is by defining the process, by going through that design cycle process with them and teaching them the structure of how this works so that they know that when they're going to be content creators, this is the process they go through. The third way is to provide projects, to provide those opportunities for kids to be creative, to be content creators in your classroom. The fourth way, I think, is to make time for play. Again, it doesn't have to be a huge amount of time, but that idea of like 20% time, kind of giving kids some free time in their classroom to try new mediums, to try new things, to explore and see how that works is really valuable. And I think it's something that's really well understood, and Emily points out too, really well understood in the lower levels, certainly in elementary, but maybe it gets lost as we go higher up, but it's still really valuable and powerful. And then the fifth way that we can provide time for students to be content creators is to give them opportunities for performance, for sharing their learning. And maybe that's just in your classroom because that's what feels safe to you. Maybe it goes a little broader within your school, and then eventually kind of more global. So those are my key ideas about why I think it's really important for students to be content creators. And I hope that was relevant and interesting for you. And I'm super proud of myself for doing this all in under 12 minutes. Thank you so much for joining me today. We'll be back next week with another Facebook Live for you and hope to see you there. Please share in the comments, share on our blog post that I think Chrissy has linked here for us. How do you get your students to be creators in the classroom? What are things that you ask your students to do? What challenges you about asking students to be creators in the classroom? What do you need help with? We'd love to kind of keep this dialogue going and hear from you about what works for you, what's interesting to you, what you would like to learn more about, because then we can tailor these sessions just for you. So thank you so much for joining me this morning, and I look forward to seeing you guys again next week. Have a great day.